people want training, particularly new people that are coming out of school or folks that are kind of in, the younger generation. Like, they want to be well trained so they can do their job well and they can contribute fully. So take the time to do that. We're seeing these practices that, have very engaged team members doing that, like giving their team members time to kind of shadow and see how things roll.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another episode of Growth in Dentistry. I am Katie Polson, and we are just so excited. I always say that. We're so excited, but I am because
we are.
Because we are, yes. And that deep, wonderful voice, ladies and gentlemen, that's Steve. Steve's here with me again. I'm so excited. And for those of you that are first listening to the show, well, happy welcome. Mm-hmm. We're so happy that you found us. Hope you stay. Hope we don't mess it up too bad that you do want to stay. But really, it's a fun time. The goal with this is just to give you some actionable advice on your way to work and make a difference in your practice one step at a time. So those of you that are not members of our Facebook Dental Intelligence podcast community, I would highly recommend you going there and checking it out and join like-minded data nerds. We have a fun time talking about business and data. And for those of you that have rated and reviewed this podcast, we just so greatly appreciate it. And for those, I encourage you to all do it. It's so great for us. So thank you so much for those of you who have done it. And the last housekeeping thing we have here is we have actually two things. For those of you that are current customers, we've launched an incredibly valuable tool within our growth platform called the DI Community. It's a really great space for those of you to come and talk about business. We've got different forums there, things that you can chat about, business ideas, how to implement the data that you see in your practice. And it's a really cool place to just hang out. So for those of you that are current customers, please go to our DI community. And for those of you that are not current customers and want to be current customers, we have a great offer for you. If you complete a demo, you'll get a $50 gift card by going to get.dentalintel.com/podcast. Again, that's get.dentalintel.com/podcast. And we have that information on our show notes as well. So with all of that being said, we're talking this month about creating a culture or a team that wants to stay. I've said this in the podcast before, the term lifers, like creating people who want to stay. And right now we're in a staffing shortage. Maybe that will stay. I don't know. I'm recording this mid to late June. You never know. Things are a little bit dicey going on in the economy. But that being said, that's where we're at now. And I feel like it's been talked about ad nauseum to some point, but at Dental Intel, we can't give you the funds to help you hire people, but we can give you the tools. And that's what we're here to do by bringing on the wonderful and talented Rachel Wall from Inspired Hygiene. We're so grateful that you're here to talk to us a little bit about creating a team of lifers. So Rachel, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I'm Rachel Wall. I am the founder and CEO of Inspired Hygiene. We're a coaching firm that helps to elevate hygiene services, systems, and profits. And have really enjoyed being able to collaborate on some things with Dental Intel and you guys over the years. Just phenomenal to watch how you all have grown, and the technology and things that you're bringing to our industry is just always on the cutting edge. And so thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, speaking of lifers, this is kind of down on my list here, but people have been reevaluating their life,
yes,
over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And we talked to 2 or 3 different clients this week specifically about some changes, in their practice. One of them, their hygienist decided to take a position that was closer to her home. So she's like 5 minutes away from her kid's school. Sometimes there are things that come up that people are reevaluating their life, and it's not necessarily anything that the employer or the team did wrong. So I think that's something that we've really got to look at and maybe build some value in the practice and that employee-employer relationship that fits within these new like ways that we're all reevaluating their life. I mean, I did it,
Yeah.
we really looked at the number of events that we were attending and the amount that we were traveling. It's like, can we do what we do and make this make a little bit more sense with our life and spending time? And people have kids that are growing up and relationships that they want to nurture and parents are taken care of, and like stuff happened over the last couple of years. I know,
Hmm.
like you said, we've been talking about this ad nauseum, but it is our reality.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
another client who's, hygienist left because her husband's in the military and they're going to live in Germany. So things happen. But I would say, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot, and it's just one of these things as business owners that, I put this on my calendar yesterday actually, and I would encourage everybody else to do that, whether you're the owner or you're a developer of people, a grower of people within your organization, is have conversations and don't wait until that annual review, right? That's kind of
Mm,
an old method. We look at things like quarterly conversations, like let's just have a conversation with our team members on a regular basis, and you have to put it on your calendar or it just won't happen.
right.
So listen to what's going on with your team, have conversations with them before it's that critical kind of make it or break it conversation of whether or not a team member is going to leave, and just see like, hey, how are things going? Is there anything that we need to do to kind of clear the air? Are there things that maybe you're not feeling great about here? And what are you feeling great? Why do you stay here? What makes you want to stay?
Mhm.
And I will say I've been really impressed, even in some practices that we've worked with that were kind of thrown into complete chaos, with just kind of the state of how things are happening in the dental world, with increased demand for patient care, uh, that's not matched by the amount of staffing that we have, and then turnover in doctors. And I mean, we've had some hygienists tell us, look, right now we're just trying to get patients to stay in the practice because we've had transitions with our doctors and things like that.
Mm,
And I'm like, why do they stay in these kind of chaotic situations? And usually it's because of the team. They're like, even though we're kind of in this mess, we're in it together. And I believe in these people here that I work with and our patients. So I think that's a beautiful thing, right? Is we
yeah.
get to create kind of these families that um that that a lot of times people aren't willing to bail on. And so it's a culture of, let's support each other. So the more we can nurture that, I think the better. And I would say just some things, whether you're a team member or a practice owner, are, have those conversations. Don't be afraid to speak up if there's something that you need to clear the air about or you're really frustrated about. And hoping and assuming that the person that's going to listen is really going to take it in. So have those conversations regularly with your team members. Listen, be willing to hear what they have to say, whether it's positive or it's constructive feedback. Um, be thoughtful about, compensation and raises. The other thing that we've been hearing is, we talked to one dentist this week who just kind of had a knee-jerk reaction, and she had two hygienists leave because of a previous doctor that wasn't real great to work with and was very difficult. And so she's like, hey, I had to recruit two new hygienists, and they're in California, and really the demand is for a very high hourly compensation. She's like, I just had to do it. But what she didn't do is sit down and figure out, how is this going to work for the business? So now she's in a position where she's in a negative cash flow with hygiene. So, before we just have this knee jerk immediate reaction, like sit down and crunch some numbers and figure out, like, okay, if I'm going to pay, $65 an hour, how am I going to make that work for the business? What can we do, and what expectations can I set for these hygienists as I'm bringing them in, to say, yeah, I'm willing to invest this in you, and here's what we're going to need to do to make sure this works for everybody in the long run. Is I see opportunities here and here and here to elevate services and hygiene. What tools and training do you need to be able to put this in place so that this is a win-win for everybody? Um, I'm hearing a lot of doctors, and again, this is something we hear every week of, hey, you know what? I just gave all the hygienists a raise across the board because we're recruiting and we're knowing we're going to need to pay at a higher rate. So when you do that, have conversations about it. You know, try to avoid it just being like, hey, everybody's getting a raise, and and I'm doing this at a desperate, like,
Mhm.
Hail Mary to keep everybody here. It's like, here's what I'm hoping we can achieve together. I want to do this for you. And so here's what we're going to also be doing, because a lot of folks at the same time, the reason we're talking to them is because they want to invest in training for their hygiene department too. And our training really involves the entire team, but it's implemented and executed within the hygiene department. So I think it's fair to say that. Say, look, I want to invest in you in these three ways. One is we're going to increase compensation, we're going to increase communication and how we really build this part of our practice. And then we're going to bring in some tools and resources from Inspired Hygiene to help grow you and grow what we can give to our patients, because it's going to help us continue to support these salaries over the long haul. We don't want to
Mhm.
raise this compensation and then 2 years from now, figure out like, oh crap, we've got to reset this and
Right.
figure out how to,
Mhm.
kind of bring this down, or we have to have some tough conversations like, how can we make this sustainable?
Yeah.
Y'all jump in if there's anything that kind of
I've
resonates
been
with you.
making notes. Rachel out of the gate. She's like,
Yeah.
well, bam! Like I told her
You
actionable
told me,
and
yeah,
she's
I'm like,
yeah,
okay, let's get
she's
to
doing
that.
I
it.
know.
But I before you move on, I've been making notes because I want to like recircle back on some of the stuff that you're talking about because I mean one thing is for certain is that hygienists there was a mass exodus of hygienists. And I love how you talked about people reevaluating their life because I really think it had to do with that. And I hope that there
Yeah.
are people listening that understand like more than likely, on average, I would say it wasn't your practice. And it wasn't, like it was that people are reevaluating their lives, right? And how they live.
Well, I mean, just think about who's on this podcast.
Yeah.
Rachel has 20 plus years of experience in hygiene, but at some point decided, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to help the hygiene industry and others really elevate their game. Katie here, hygienist,
Yep.
at some point decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go jump into the software space, right? So still practices hygiene occasionally, but it's here. And then I'm not a hygienist. My wife is, however, and she decided she was going to walk away from full-time hygiene to be a mom, right? So there's lots of reasons why someone might say, hey, like I'm going to evaluate what I'm doing, what's best for me in my life and my career, and jump into things. Obviously, though, I think for most hygienists, it's fair to say that they do love the career. My wife, even though that she's not practicing, she still says, I'm a hygienist. Like, don't say that
Yeah,
I'm
me
not.
too.
Like,
Me
I'm a
too.
Me
mom, but I'm
too.
also a hygienist. I still love practicing. I love the
Yep.
career. And there are people in her life that have inspired her to want to keep that title, right? That she loves,
Yeah.
she loves who she is, even though she's not practicing every day. And so I think some of the stuff you've already highlighted, Rachel, are things that can help people keep that, where like they will always be proud of, their hygiene title, regardless of what their kind of long-term career looks like. Okay, sorry. What did you want to?
No,
You had two other things.
you're good. So I love the question of why do you work here? I think often we talk about why do we like the problems, and instead of focusing on the positive things and like leaning into those, right? So I love that. That's a great question that to ask on a frequent basis, like you mentioned.
Why do you stay?
Yeah. Why do you stay? And then crunching your numbers. I want to kind of circle back to that because we've talked a lot about in previous, when we've been talking about the staffing dilemma, we've talked about using data to do those quarterly meetings that you're talking about. A lot of times the people go into those meetings and it's all feelings like I feel like I'm doing this, or I feel like I'm doing all of these things really great. But especially with hygienists, like they have the opportunity to track their production, their case acceptance, their like all of these things that they can set their own goals and feel like they are involved in the practice and making a difference. And I love that you brought up like using data to know where you stand to be able to hire and how much you can pay them. I mean, that's obvious. It seems obvious, but for some people it's just not. They make those knee-jerk reactions. And then B, using those numbers to have great meetings with your team. So love it.
Yeah, and
Really good.
and celebrate what's working well and where they need more support. So I would say that's the other piece of keeping team members too, is that support and just constantly rallying like, hey guys, like we're a team. We've got to make sure we support each other. And we tell hygienists all the time, that maybe feel like they're not getting the support from the team. Sometimes in life, we've got to step over that line first, right? We've got to be the one to offer the help first. And then it just creates a natural imbalance in our favor of, you know what, like, Katie helped me with that tough patient the other day. She came in and gave anesthetic when we were running behind. And so, I've got a minute. I'm going to go check with her and see if there's anything I can do to help her, and just continually nurturing that. And the more that that is put out, the more it comes back. And so, we've just got to be adults and mature sometimes and just say, okay, so maybe I don't have the greatest relationship with this particular team person, but I'm going to go and help them. I'm going to
Yeah.
ask them, how can I help you? So, because that's what we've got to have. And you know what I've noticed some dentists doing too is when they do have an opportunity to hire somebody, maybe it's an extra assistant who can just be kind of a buffer, or maybe they trade off days where they're kind of roaming around the practice and seeing where they can help. It really makes a difference to have a little bit of extra support right now if you can get it. So, if you have the opportunity to have like maybe one more assistant than what you actually need, it really is helping teams kind of stay on time, reduce stress, get
Mm-hmm.
some support with regards to, sterilization or just greeting patients, or
Yeah.
just helping things move along. So I would
I,
say
I
that,
mean, who wouldn't want to
yeah,
practice six-handed dentistry? Like everybody would, right? So
right,
even
exactly.
if you don't have a patient in the chair, I love that. I love
Yeah,
the idea of
yeah,
another assistant. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And a lot of our teams have had incredibly productive couple years. And, so they're like, yeah, if we could find another team member, we would hire them in a heartbeat because it would be worth it. So I would say if you find yourself in that position, and you can make sense of it from a financial standpoint, I would say do it. We're seeing it to be very helpful. And one of the ways that it's helpful in one practice in particular is one of their hygienists decided to move to a practice that was closer to her home. So she had a shorter commute to her kids' school and to work. And so they happen to have an extra assistant. And so in the time now that they're kind of between hygienists bringing in, a new hire, is they've found a way to do some occasional assisted hygiene.
Mhm.
So, they're able to accommodate some of those patients that were on her schedule, not all of them. We told them, we're like, don't make it crazy. Like, don't try to like, double up and do two full columns, but you've got an extra assistant, like where it works, if it reduces your need to reschedule, 30% of the patients that was on her schedule, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of patients that we can kind of keep in the recare cycle.
Yeah, I love that.
So, yeah, there are some strategies there that actually can be pretty handy when, things get kind of tight on the hygiene
And then
schedule
you don't
side.
have to worry so much about, I mean, it takes, I mean, the I don't know, I don't have the word for it, but like the team equity, I guess, that you put
Mhm.
into and like training these people and making them like part of your team, uh, to be able to do that with just someone who's a helper and then moves into
Mhm.
that spot, right? And then
Mhm.
you elevate them to a point where they are like the lead assistant, and then you have another
Mhm.
helper. Like it's almost like you're creating a dental assisting school
Yeah.
within your own like practice,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like I've heard a
Yeah.
lot, I've heard a lot of dentists like to start or like do dental assisting schools on the weekends and nights, just so they can like hand pick the people that they
Mhm.
want to work for
Yep.
them. And that's, I guess, one way to do it on a smaller scale. Yeah, I like that
Mhm.
idea. Really good.
Yeah, and to that point too, when you do hire new team members, like be thoughtful. I mean, it's tempting to say, okay, we've got a whole week of patients that we need to accommodate because the hygienist left. Let's just get them in there. Give your new hires, it doesn't matter what role they're in, give them a week to kind of shadow and get to know your culture and your philosophy, and following the other hygienists, observing the doctor, like kind of getting a sense of what the practice is about. And they can be there helping, right? They can, if they, step into see a patient here and there throughout that week, that's great. But but it's a worthy investment to give them the time to really get acclimated rather than day one, like they've got a full schedule and they don't have time to get properly trained. That's one thing that I think also that time invested is going to increase your chances of that person staying in your
Mhm.
practice because people want training, particularly new people that are coming out of school or folks that are kind of in, the younger generation. Like they want to be well trained so they can do their job well and they can contribute fully. So take the time to do that. We're seeing these practices that have very engaged team members doing that, like giving their team members time to kind of shadow and see how things
Uh,
roll in their
when you
practice.
were talking about that, it's a concept I never really had thought about I mean, obviously I've thought about taking time to do training, but that I was thinking, why do people not do that? Because it's a really common thing in dentistry to just throw people in and like
Yeah.
let them swim, and they don't take
Mhm.
any time to train. And I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but why do people not train? I would imagine it's just because they don't have time. Like they're thinking for themselves. Like, I just need this person to fill this space.
Yeah, I think because it's not easy to call, 30 patients and try to find another place for them. Let's be honest, right? That is
Yeah.
not an
Mhm.
easy task. I think also just because of the nature of our training is you think, okay, well, this person is a hygienist. They know clinically what to do.
Mhm.
So, we can jump in there and do the best we can, but are we are we honoring the standard of care in that practice? Are
Right.
we honoring the way that we want new patients to be approached and the experience we want them to have?
Mhm.
So think about that. If that hygienist has got 5 new patients on their schedule that day, you're probably going to lose more in production because they didn't have the experience that you wanted them to have, or you're
Yeah.
going to lose in longevity of that patient
Mhm.
more than what you would have gained if you had thrown them into like a week of production. So,
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
let them be trained so that they understand your philosophies and it's going to take time, but giving them that, week of just kind of getting to know everybody and showing how they can be a team member and they can step up is really pretty valuable.
Yeah. I mean, it can feel like a big sacrifice for someone who's hiring and
Yeah,
they just want
Mhm.
them to get
I
going.
know.
But
I know.
I don't doubt it. And because some new patients practices want intraoral photos on every patient,
Right.
or they want
Mhm.
image, like six cosmetic images on
Yeah.
every, whatever it is. That's not something they teach you in dental hygiene school, just so you know. Like we
Yeah. Right.
we
Or
can't
how,
read the mind of how you want to treat a new patient. Yeah.
right. Or how to tee up treatment for the doctor. It's like
Yeah.
let the,
The handoff. Yeah.
and I would say it's fair to like make sure that you've got your team prep too. Like, hey guys, like let's be on our game because we have a new person coming in. They're going to be your helper this week. So let's show them the best that we've got, right? Let's try to stay on our systems and on our standards of care. You've got this extra set of hands. So let's make sure that we're showing them our best. And you can you can compromise that a bit. Like maybe you have them shadow in the morning and then they see a couple patients in the afternoon, and do that for a few days. And then maybe, on Wednesday, you have the new hygienist see the patients in the afternoon. You have one of your more experienced hygienists shadow and help them and give them some coaching and some pointers. So just work on it as a team and just
Mhm.
just think of it as a long haul, right?
Yeah.
Think of this as how am I investing in this team member and this experience for the long haul.
I love that you brought that up, because as I was thinking of these things to talk about today, I was so focused on somebody who's already been there for a while.
Mhm.
But really what you've pointed out today is it starts from when they start, like
Yeah.
with their first experience within the practice. And that is like when the longevity will start. I love
Hmm.
that.
Now,
Such a good
I want to
advantage.
Yeah.
start shifting our gears a little bit.
Yep.
So we've spent
Yeah.
this beginning has really been focused on, what can leaders do to help create a culture where people are happy and they want to stay. Some things I've heard are the importance of communication at the beginning. One thought as you talked, Rachel, that came to my mind from Brene Brown. She says that clear is kind. So sometimes
Yeah.
we're afraid of like setting expectations, or you said like, don't wait for the annual review to have a difficult conversation. And it's important to remind ourselves that clear is kind. So when we can communicate clearly expectations, or if we're giving a raise, here's what that's got to look like in order to, justify comping someone at that level, whatever that is. Or even with training, we just have been discussing, right? Like making sure that we're so clear, hey, here's how things work here. Here's how we're going to succeed together. And here's how you can help contribute is so important as a leader. Now, where I want to shift is the hygiene team is such a crucial part of treatment acceptance, of the experience everyone has in the practice, the assistants, the doctors, the front office even. So can you talk a little bit about how a hygienist, we've been focused on the leadership, on the kind of like the ownership, office management leadership team. Can you talk to us about how a hygienist can help contribute to a culture where everyone in the practice is enjoying themselves and wants to stay?
Yeah, I think having an attitude of collaboration and also building up our other team members, So I heard recently from one of our clients, they are having some transition on their team, and they said, you know what, one of the hygienists said, I try every opportunity to say, oh my gosh, so the next time you come, you may see Jessica, the other hygienist, and you are going to love her. And here's the secret tip. Jessica trained me. So, I know you enjoy working with me and I love seeing you. She's just even more amazing. Like, you're going to love it. So building up your other team members, whether that is, an administrative team member, you have a treatment conversation with someone, and then you say, you know what, I really have every confidence that, Steve is going to be able to help you find a way to make this work with your life and help this treatment, be the best for you. So he can answer all of the questions about what your insurance might contribute, what your portion's going to be, and how to work that out. So we're constantly instilling confidence in the patient in our rest of our team. So, rather than saying, yeah, I don't really know what your insurance is going to provide, I'm sure,
job.
Yeah, they can answer that. And, nobody intends to just throw people under the or kind of drop the ball, but just be intentional about building up the patient's confidence in everybody else on your team. And they're just going to get a sense of like, wow, like these folks have it together, and it just creates an environment of them feeling supported.
Yeah. And I'm in good hands with whoever I see here.
Yes.
I think a lot of times, I mean, I don't know how many times I have a patient on my schedule who only sees me, and I'm like, we are all great here. You're going to be in good hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you can say specific things like, you know what, I will review your charts and everything with Katie so that when she sees you this next time, she's really prepared. And so, for example, we talk about this a lot, especially with the way schedules are really tight now, is if a patient that I'm, working with the doctor on diagnosing today for a periodontal therapy, for example, and this patient's going to be on Katie's schedule for that therapy, then I've got to say, I'm going to review everything that you and I discussed with Katie. So she's going to be fully up to speed. And she and I have been trained the same way. And we have the same, standard of care. And she's going to take amazing care of you. And you're going to love working with her. So, instead of like, oh my God, this is my patient, nobody can see them except me. That creates a lot of stress and pressure on me.
Especially if you only work a couple days a week, then when does this patient come in for their 4 hours of whatever they need to come in for, right?
Right. And so we've got to think about the patient is, if they have an active infection, is it more important for them to see me, or is it more important for them to get in sooner to have that treated?
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to get this done as soon as possible. And that's everything that we've communicated. So I would say having an attitude of collaboration, whether that is with the rest of your team members and also with your doctor from a hygienist standpoint, but really anybody on the team, like how can we work together to make this a better, environment for our patients, and then build up the other hygienists, build up your doctor, build up your team.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, that was a quick 30 minutes for me. That was so good, but I could talk to another hygienist all day long. So
I'm like, are we done?
That's all right. We'll have you on again.
Which I'll just say, Rachel just said she's got another page. She probably has books of notes. Rachel does. I'll give Rachel. She didn't really give herself like a great plug. Rachel and her team are industry leading consultants in the hygiene space. I'm serious when I say they are the best of the best. So if you've not engaged with Rachel, seen any of her content, whether that's books or articles or videos or webinars she's done, or attended any of her in-person events, please find her and listen to her, because
Yeah,
she's got so much value to share with you. We just got a little snippet of it
Yeah,
today.
for sure. I'm going to
Thank you.
I'm going to let you introduce that so people can find you in a minute, but I want to ask you the question that we ask every single one of our guests at the end of the show, which is, what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
So this is where my next page of notes come in, but we're gonna save a little bit of that for next
Yep.
time, right?
Yep.
I would say it really is like it's growth in my mindset around my role in dentistry.
Mm,
And so I would challenge everybody to, it doesn't always have to be growth in, the number of patients that we see or that kind of thing. It can also be growing my mindset and my belief in my role for my patients and for my team. And that always includes the willingness to kind of get out of my comfort zone. Maybe there's another service that we're bringing to the practice and I'm not 100% confident in how to present that yet, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow in that area because it's going to grow my contribution to my patients and my team.
yeah, it's a great
Brilliant.
response. Really good. This has been Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast. Again, special thanks to our guest, Rachel Wall from Inspired Hygiene. Rachel, if they want to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Follow me as well. And then, we just love to have conversations with people about how they can help take their hygiene department to the next level, get systems in place, create consistency between their hygiene team and diagnosis and communication. So shoot us an email at clients@Inspired Hygiene, and we'd love to just jump on the phone and just have a conversation with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm writing
Awesome.
that down.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you on. We'll have that your links to that in your show notes. So for those of you that are driving, don't pull over. We'll make sure that you can find that. Thanks to our marketing department for their work on this podcast. And again, thank you again, Rachel. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.